This week on the BackTable podcast.
Overall blend is that the OBL's down 10 to 15% this year, going into 23. And the ASCs on any particular procedure, it can be anywhere from 3% to 30% up. And we see that, iliac intervention is a great marquee end of the conversation in that, iliacs are, they're into that 30 to 50% increase range in the surgery center as opposed to the OBL. That would be a balloon angioplasty and stent. And then if you add shockwave to that, because it's, most of those iliac lesions that Blake and I see, at least in Oklahoma, are extremely calcified and are advantageous to do with shockwave.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BackTable podcast, your source for all things interventional and endovascular. You can find all previous episodes of our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and on BackTable.com. First, a brief message from our sponsor. When you need to restore flow in an ischemic limb, there's no time to lose. You need the Pounce Thrombectomy system. The Pounce system from Surmodics is a purpose-built percutaneous device for removing thrombus and embolus in the peripheral arterial vasculature. No capital equipment or aspiration needed. Just grab, go, and restore flow. It's simple. With the Pounce system, you place the basket wire distal to the clot, place the collection funnel proximal to the clot, pull back to collect the clot in the funnel, and retract the system through your guide sheath. The secret sauce? The Pounce funnel is designed to macerate and dehydrate the clot, allowing you to remove even large amounts of material through a 7 French sheath. Visit pouncesystem.com to learn how physicians have used the device to accelerate on-table flow restoration while reducing use of thrombolytics. Pounce Thrombectomy. Strike quickly to capture and remove clot. Now, back to the episode. We have 2 recurring guests. This is y'all's 4th time on the show. Hard to believe, right? Going back to episode 69. You were on 69, 129, and 205 was the last time we covered reimbursement update. And we're going to do another reimbursement update because it's been about a year, definitely over a year since we did it last. Blake and Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, man. Good to be back.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to this every year as far as how we can help the people as far as updates on reimbursement and how it's moving one way or the other and what we would recommend, going forward.
Yeah, we got a lot of great feedback after that last episode we did, and it was great to see you guys at OEIS. A little shout out to OEIS because that was a great conference. That was the first time actually second time I went, but it was in Vegas, and we got to hang out with you guys and Sonny Bagla and a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long time. So let's start out with just any new developments in the practice. You did mention last time that you did team up with a firm, but we didn't get into many details. But anything else that since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, we did partner up November of last year, so about a year and a month in with private equity firm Assured Health Partners, which our platform is called Heart and Vascular Partners, HVP. And in just 1 year, we've extended Oklahoma City to Colorado Springs, Denver, Pueblo, Texas, a few locations in Texas, and also Illinois and into Indiana, all of those areas. So mostly cardiology, vascular surgery, and interventional radiology, obviously.
Wow. So you guys have grown that much just in the last year and a half?
Yeah, year and 17 days.
Wow. That's incredible. And covering, like you said, so are all those sites similar to your site in Oklahoma City where it's a combination of IR, vascular surgery, and IC?
So a lot of them are cardiology based, but then we move vascular surgery and IR into them very quickly. And a lot of these are hospital-based docs that are tired of that life and want to start something on their own and drive a legacy and build something that provides, number one, patient care outcomes and satisfaction at the top of the list. And so you have different places, like some places we partner with and buy are do have an ASC or they have an OBL only, and then other places have nothing. So there's a lot of gap there as far as what we do. Some places we're building ground up, or we're buying real estate and building out an ASC from there. And some places we have to build an MOB and an ASC. So A lot of challenges, but C-suite with Heart and Vascular Partners is completely built out with extremely talented people that we're very proud of and look forward to the future for sure.
So since we already kind of jumped into it, the way I wanted to structure this episode, kind of like we did last one, was some questions from the audience. I did get a lot of questions from the audience, and apologies if I don't get to all of them, but we want to kind of streamline this conversation. But since we're already talking about private equity activity and these acquisitions, I do have a question from Franklin Yao and Kavi Devilapalli along these lines. So Franklin wants to know, what advantages, and you kind of already mentioned them, but maybe more globally, what advantages does alignment with a PE firm provide when it comes to operational efficiency and cost savings? And do you think it's essential for survival even at this point?
Well, I think it probably, it provides scale and the capability to provide a value-based care model in the future, which, in the middle of the country where we are and where you're from, Aaron, is not going to get there first. It'll be the Californias and the East Coast of the world that go value-based care first, but we will be ready for it when it's there and have a model of cardiovascular care that consists of cardiologists, vascular surgeons, and interventional radiologists to offer to payers that is extremely valuable in the space as far as being a better place for patient care, outcomes, satisfaction, infection rates, all those kind of things. And obviously, they'll be paying a lower cost for the service in that outpatient space. So we're real excited about it. I think it's the way of the future for sure. If you're out there alone, it's going to be a little tough.
Yeah, and kind of along those lines, Kavi wants to know: does a GPO or MSO come with that, or do you use a buying collective separate from the PE firm?
Yeah, our particular model is every one of the buys continues to maintain local control. I mean, where you need help, we will help you. But local control is the key. The docs continue to run their own practice. But if they need help in RCM or they need help recruiting, they need help in marketing, we have all of those scaled and ready to go. But we definitely do not force those things on any local practice. If they're doing it well and they're doing it better than Cardiovascular Health Clinic here in Oklahoma City, then we'll adopt their method.
Okay.
So it's a partnership that's valued on local control.
That's great. It sounds like it allows for that flexibility, and which is what a lot of docs want. They don't want to be forced to use something that they're not used to. Because we all know, that doesn't lead to better patient care if you're forced to use a device that you're not familiar with, or maybe you didn't train with, or that is forced upon you. So that's great.
We will not be one vendor, more than likely. I mean, if a certain place is used to one atherectomy device, we still have scale to buy that at a very competitive price.
Okay. Let me ask just generally first, what's on the butcher's block? What do we know? What do we currently know is happening, and anything that we're anticipating, since I know you guys are keeping a close eye on reimbursement cuts?
I'll let Blake talk in just a second on obviously his expertise on embolization, and which is a big part of our practice. And Blake has made that part of our practice very successful. But on the arterial side, which Blake is just as involved with as I am also, but the overall blend is that the OBL's down 10 to 15% this year. Going into 23, and the ASCs on any particular procedure, it can be anywhere from 3% to 30% up. And we see that, iliac intervention is a great marquee end of the conversation, in that, iliacs are, they're into that 30 to 50% increase range in the surgery center as opposed to the OBL. That would be a balloon angioplasty and stent. And then if you add shockwave to that, because it's, most of those iliac lesions that Blake and I see, at least in Oklahoma, are extremely calcified and are advantageous to do with shockwave. And the payment is, it goes up 60% when you use it with shockwave. So, and that is not a payable code in the OBL. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what Tim Yates wanted to know is the OBL going to be phased out by the ASC given these cuts? Is this all kind of like strategized by CMS? What are your thoughts on that, or what are you guys seeing when it comes to OBL versus ASC?
Well, I think Blake and I both can agree, and I'll quit talking here and let Blake talk. But I think at the end of the day, the problem, I think that some of the issues with these cuts are the bad players in the OBL market. And so they see, that I think they see that happening, and they want a licensed JCO accredited, AAA accredited, whatever you choose. Our particular platformers are all JCO accredited, but you can still maintain your hybrid status. But I think that's why it's being pushed. And also, just more and more codes are coming over every year. We actually got from Humana, Medicare plan had approved as of January of 2023, TCARs are approved in the space. So I think it's only a matter of time until those are all going to come, to a point where, the safety's not. When I say that, I mean carotids and TCARs and, most of my FemPops that are pretty straightforward, open FemPops, go home the next day. And, in our 20,000 square foot facility, we have overnight stay beds. So, we keep them overnight if needed on those particular procedures. And we built those in anticipation of some of these procedures, moving over from the hospital to the surgery space center.
Blake, let's talk a little bit about embolization before I jump into some more questions that are globally kind of about ASC versus OBL. What are we seeing on the embolization side in terms of OBL versus ASC?
Yeah, exactly. So on the embolization side, which obviously most IR, especially that are in an OBL setting already, I mean, that's a large part of their practice from a financial standpoint, right? I mean, PAD and embo are going to be our highest reimbursing procedures that we do. For arterial and venous, it's unfortunately going to the ASC side now. That's slowly showing a decrease in the OBL and increase in the ASC. However, and that it ranges anywhere so the decreases in the OBL are around 7 to 8%, and they're increasing in the ASC anywhere from 3 to 30%. It's kind of a broad range, but it just depends on what you're doing. So we're seeing the trend there. However, our main kind of thing that we're doing, if you're doing prostates or you're doing fibroid embolization, so the end organ ischemia code, however, is still maintaining. It is slowly decreasing a little bit in the OBL and increasing the ASC, but there's still about a 3,500 gap, at least here in Oklahoma, and I'm sure it's going to be that nationwide. So it still makes way more sense to continue the end organ ischemia embolization in your OBL space for sure.
I will add on to that. If I send Blake or if I do an embolization of an internal iliac or a accessory renal to prep for a aneurysm repair in the hospital, that's now better in the surgery center because that's not, end organ, because it's just a arterial embolization. So, those are fine differences that you really have to know before you place that patient in that, place of service.
Yeah. So another question from Tim, with continued drops in reimbursement, even though they're slight in some places, he wants to ask you guys, when does our practice become unsafe because of volume demands to make up the bottom line? And he also kind of wants to know about diversification. How specialized are you guys getting versus trying to like new service lines? I know previously we've talked about kyphoplasty and MSK embolizations as well, not just PAD and embolization, but you still got to be specialized. At what point does diversification and volume make it just unmanageable or unscalable even?
Well, I think that's why it's so important to have multidisciplinary approach and not just IRs, not just vascular surgeons and not just cardiologists.
Yeah.
Because we were the first surgery center in the country to implant a heart failure device called a Barostim. Barostim is a carotid bifurcation stimulation of the bifurcation of the carotid. And we hooked that up to basically a pacemaker generator, and it helps heart failure patients, and is also going to be approved in Q2 of 23 for hypertension that's uncontrolled also. And those are really big returns. Those are pass-through codes on the device, and those are all Medicare approved in the space. And again, we've done 4 now, and we were the first ASC in the country to do one in that space. So
perfect. And so Christian Amanova, vascular surgeon out of Columbus, Ohio, wanted to ask, it seems like every fall as an interventional community, we're reactively trying to block CMS reimbursement cuts. And I know you guys are pretty involved, but he kind of wants to know, for those independent guys out there, are there ways we can proactively act to secure our payment rates for the complex work that we do?
Yeah, I think the best way, Blake can speak on this too, is the vendors really work hard for us in that they pay a lot of money to lobbyists, and you know how that works. Unfortunately, I don't like the way it works. I don't think any of us here on BackTable like the way that works, but it is a truth that they spend a lot of money lobbying for OBLs and surgery centers to try their best to not get cuts. For instance, some of the add-on cardiology codes with FFR are being reimbursed in 2023 now, where they weren't. We got cut on atherectomy reimbursement because of a review that most of the time that comes from ivory towers, and they don't want to see that being done as an outpatient, even though they're sending their patients home the same day too. But I think that those are things that vendors, and I mean the big boys, the Bostons of the world, the Abbotts of the world, the Phillips of the world, that they really, really do help us in that. And I would go to them first and see if there's anything that you can help them write, or you can help them articulate in any way. That would be my advice.
Okay.
I mean, to that point, they got a lot more money than we'll ever have as an IR community to put together and go to Washington and fight, right? Plus, they're financially way more incentive to do it and maintain those rates, because ultimately they're trying to prove why they're charging what they're charging to have for their device, right? So
right, yeah,
it makes a lot of sense to his point that they're involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, as physicians, just to have some margin, we'll have to go with the cheapest devices, which is not a good solution either.
And I think that's another reason to have scale. I mean, as HVP, Heart and Vascular Partners, we obviously have the capital to lobby also, and we also have we have our own lobbyists, and then also we have a lot of ability to scale product down as cheap as you can get it. So another big advantage.
So this kind of goes back to the ASC versus OBL. Krishna wants to know, is there logic behind the different reimbursements for different peripheral endovascular CPT codes, depending on the place of service? As we just already talked about, some are better ASC, some are better in the OBL. He's like, I've never figured out, is there a thoughtful rationale to this? Have you guys heard of any thoughtful rationale, or is it just that we're playing checkers and they're playing chess and we're losing?
Correct. I think it just, to the question earlier, they're just trying to move it. I mean, there's too many unfortunate bad apples, and anything that starts to get abused, they obviously put their eyes on, and instead of building a whole another side of service that has to oversee and governing body, why would they do that and spend money on it when they can ultimately drive it into a space that's already there by changing reimbursement? So I think that's ultimately why you're seeing it. They're trying to whittle out a lot of the people that are in it for the wrong reasons and move it into an area that's already governed.
I 100% agree.
So this is another EMBO question. David Cohen out of Memphis wants to know any update on some of the newer EMBO procedures, Blake, like GAE, hemorrhoids, and then do you have an update on prostate?
Not really. I mean, we're still obviously waiting on FDA approval. There's people obviously doing these and submitting them. I think it's risky, given that there's been other people have done podcasts about it and saying that, well, it has a pass-throughs code and you don't have to worry about it. I wouldn't be so sure that your insurer at some point is not going to look back through and say, what was the indication? And they're going to say, whoa, we don't pay for that. Not like for knees. They didn't have hemarthrosis. It was just pain. And they're going to say, give me my money back now. So that can happen. So just because you pass the code and it's like, oh, we don't need to pre-auth it, we can go ahead and do it, doesn't mean that you're ultimately going to get, your reimbursement maintained.
Yeah.
They can come back. We've seen it. So I still think it's pretty early to be marketing and going after the embolization and all that. Hemorrhoid's a different story because they all typically have bleeding. So it does meet some indication for it. And I think that is an area that you can start to grow. And prostate, it is what it is. It's regional, right? I mean, it's been FDA approved, so Medicare pays for it. And for here in Oklahoma, we're lucky. Most of our insurers do cover it. However, as you know, state to state's completely different. Blue Cross of Oklahoma may cover, they cover gonadal vein embolization. However, Blue Cross of Virginia will say they don't. So it's screwy how they all don't have the same requirements, but they don't. So it's just kind of a state to state deal, and you got to figure it out. We still have United won't cover it. They still think it's experimental. But we get plenty of patients there's enough data out there and enough people now to have been treated that they want to have it done. And so we get a lot more cash, people paying cash to have the procedure done as well. So that's an option also.
Don Garbett, who recently visited you guys, said he had a great experience, but he did come away with a question that had to do with scaling, which is clinic efficiency. He's like, how do they see 60 patients in one clinic day? And so he wanted to know, because obviously this, for those people who are looking at scaling, is how did you guys kind of get to that point? And is there a special sauce to the staffing model to make that happen?
Yeah, I think I see every patient that's on my schedule. We just use extenders to try to help with that put through. And they are very good at what they do. So they have those patients really prepped and ready to be spoken to when you walk in the room. So it's all about extenders.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously for me as the IR, I do use an extender for our superficial venous side, and they see all the new patients, make sure that they're being optimized and compliant for their workups, getting their ultrasound, and then I see them all afterwards and go over everything. But it just kind of depends, I see every patient also. Ultimately, if it's a patient who's here for their 1 year or 6 month follow-up status post arterial intervention, and they're coming to make sure they get their ABI signals or their ultrasound, and you go over that and you talk with them, make sure they're abiding by their, anticoagulation and non-smoking, all that good stuff. It doesn't take a real long time for those routine follow-ups, right? Now, every pelvic congestion patient and fibroid and prostate, that may be a 15 to 20 minute clinic visit for myself, walking them through, drawing them stuff out. What are we doing? Explaining it to them. So I think a lot of IRs don't, we're not used to having much follow-up, right? We see a new patient, you do the procedure and it's gone. But as you grow a practice like this in the outpatient space where you have a lot of vascular patients as well, you really do start to build up your follow-ups. And so that's a large portion of why I like our clinic volume so high as well, right?
Yeah. Well, I know you guys got some shit for it on Twitter, I saw, which I thought was unwarranted because, my wife's the ENT and she'll come home from clinic and she'll be like, I saw, 50 kids today. And she was at Dallas Children's where she's seeing complex patients. And so I just was like, I don't see that being unreasonable when you hear about that in primary care, especially, right? And what do they use? They use physician extenders because they're not there for the whole conversation. They're there for the important part of the conversation.
Correct. Yeah. And for us, the problem is we're proceduralists, right? So if someone comes to us, they're coming to us for typically one specific problem and one specific issue. Like I'm not family medicine where they come with a notebook full of 30 different problems that I have to go through. There's no way you could do that in that space. But, and the other thing is, unfortunately, we really kind of have to have longer clinics and get through patients because we need the procedural time to be able to do all these patients during the week. So it's, the naysayers, they can look at our groups, Google reviews and everything else. I don't think that any patient feels slighted, and we always run on time. And, our ultimate goal is to provide a great service for the patient, make sure that they're educated on both the disease process and what they're having done. And they feel comfortable, right? We don't want them to feel like they're just being run through, like cattle. That's not what we want. So I think we're still able to provide that, even though as crazy as it sounds, but we're still able to provide that to our patients.
I think a lot of those patients, to Blake's point, is, they've had a carotid ultrasound for me and an ABI, and they're on the chart. And I'm just making sure their carotid site that I did is okay and their other side hasn't increased. And, so again, those conversations aren't as long as, someone with velocities of 400 over 180 that needs a carotid done. So different story. So I think, again, we take a lot of pride in taking good care of our patients and making sure everybody, to Blake's point, is comfortable with their decision on how they want to go forward with their care.
Just a couple more questions, guys, before we wrap up. Ali Alicani wanted to know any update on percutaneous fistula creations. Are you guys still doing many of those as part of your practice, and any trends on, how those are going to reimburse in the future?
Yeah, they actually just got a new code. So they have slightly increased in their reimbursement. I will say that we had not done many, as we've added a couple vascular surgeons. We've just been doing a lot more open than we have percutaneous. We did quite a few right at the beginning when it started, but it's always kind of hard at some point for us to keep a scalpel out of the vascular surgeon's hands. So but we've definitely, it's on our agenda for this year to look at again and do our due diligence and the data. We had a lot of difficulty in the initial part of just access, since most of those patients are going to have like dual outflow, and get them in either band directing it into one, or because most of our dialysis centers can't even access a 10 millimeter fistula, cephalic fistula on a skinny person, much less if I'm trying to get them to do dual access and a cephalic and a basilic, and that they've got to palpate because they can't look at it, so there's some issues with that. And obviously the companies will help with training and those type of things. But like in our state, when you've got a dialysis center literally on every corner and patients are coming from all of them, it makes it a little difficult. So,
yeah, I think that as long as you have a good, maturation program, ours are monitored, with duplex really close. And if we're not seeing flow volumes like we should, on an RC or BC or whatever, or a transposed brachiobasilic, then, they go straight to, or, just send them straight to Blake. And, the maturation process starts with balloon angioplasty and bulking those things up. And whether it be coil embolization of a big branch or just making a small incision and tying it off, so all those things, the maturation program is real important in those fistulas. And I think the fistula first program we've developed here is pretty good, and it's hard to beat, try to go a different direction, but we're always looking at those options for sure.
All right. Just to kind of wrap up here, one more question for, because we actually have a lot of people in the audience who are interested in, they're out there on their own, kind of like Neil Corona and Chad Lorish, it's the two of them. People will kind of want to know, okay, we're not ready to join another group or be part of private equity, but what's the next best option? And we talked about resources, sharing resources. Is it an MSO, join an MSO to save money? Is it, anything else that you can, advice you can give to the people that kind of just want to stay independent?
Yeah, I think if you do stay independent, which, we could have done that too. We just had a longer term vision, and it's easier to recruit and keep, good people. The gap in Blake and I's age is, I'm almost dead and he's got a lot of years left. So, I think that, at the end of the day, I've got to have a way to recruit these guys, and the way that they stay and they stay excited is they really have potential to make, I would say generational type of money, on a private equity side. But you can stay independent and do fine. A bunch of independents joining together to get a good GPO is a good idea. Sure, is form an MSO and have some scale to buy for sure.
Yeah, but the staffing is a good point. And how do you recruit? On the recruitment side, somebody had a question as to once you've sold, then how do you recruit? Because are you then just recruiting employees, or is there still some form of partnership track?
Yeah, so we basically recruit them and put them on just like you would if you were independent. You put them on and we still own the majority of the practice. Our private equity, deal is, we didn't sell a lot up front, and again, the whole philosophy of ours is to maintain local control at every place. But yeah, I think that the recruitment's a lot easier because once they've proven themselves and they're a hard worker and they're a good partner, most of all, and they do the right thing for patients, ethically and with good outcomes, then they're given a bonus to put a lot of money in the MSO that has a very good, return. So, whereas if you go to a hospital, you got an RVU number, and when you walk out the door at the hospital, you can take your desk and your plaques with you, but that's about it.
All right. To wrap up, I just texted Blake, an article about the recently publicly announced DOJ False Claims Act complaint against Modern Vascular, something that is being spread throughout IRs and probably vascular surgeons as well. I don't know anybody that works in the group, so I can't speak for them, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that are, I do know that there's good people that work for them, but do you guys know anything about, what kind of impact this has for other groups, more importantly?
Yeah, I think it just really, hit home with, all the due diligence we do when we get called by anybody that's interested in scaling with us is, once you raise the hood up and look at the motor, you really need to know that they're doing the right thing and doing it the right way. And there's absolutely zero tolerance on any Stark Law, violation, pathways or algorithms of any kind.
All right. Well, any closing remarks before we wrap up, guys? Appreciate you guys coming on again.
No, we appreciate you always having us on. It's always a great time, and it's just been awesome to see how BackTable's just flourished over the years, man. You've done a fantastic job.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I second that. And I don't get paid by BackTable. I just want to go on record as saying that. But I do try my best to push vendors your way because I think that it's so important. And it's been such a great podcast, not because Blake and I have been on it, but I listen to it all the time. Kudos and keep the good work. Anything we can do at Heart and Vascular Partners to help BackTable, we're all in.
He's been paying me, but that's because I'm an IR doctor. So.
Yeah. Well, I pay you guys in hoodies. That's how I get everybody to do.
I need another one, by the way. Yeah.
I love those hoodies.
Yeah. But yeah, Blake, also on the topic of apparel, what's up with the scrubs? When can we get our hands on some scrubs?
Oh God. Yeah. Some people know about it, I guess, but not all. We've kind of kept it on the down low. We had a kind of soft launch this year just to kind of trial it out. For everybody that doesn't know, essentially several years ago when I wanted to buy some scrubs because I was tired of my baggy ones making me look like I weighed 400 pounds, I was going to go buy, I won't name names, but competitors. And that was about the time there was a bad post that was kind of anti-DO. Me being a fellow DO, I was then like, well, hell, I can't buy these anymore. So I went down this rabbit hole of the scrub market, and here we go. About 2 years later, we now have a company and product that has really actually been pretty phenomenal. Our whole goal was to be able to provide a quality that's better than anybody else, but at a price that's way cheaper than everybody else. And ultimately, we want to take that and be able to help out healthcare workers with all across with education and that type of stuff. So that's the ultimate goal. But anyway, this 2023 should be our official launch here, and we'll have lots more on it coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
They're amazing. They
are nice. I got a sample, and I am looking forward to some advertisements being placed on the BackTable podcast for the scrubs. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks to our audience. You can get all prior episodes. Again, go check out, if you haven't already, check out Blake and Jim's prior episodes, episode 69, 129, and 205. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, direct message us at @_BackTable on Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. BackTable is produced and hosted by myself, Aaron Fritts, and co-hosts
Chris Beck, Sabine Dond,
Michael Barraza,
and Ali Behetti.
Our audio team lead is Kieran Gannon, with support from
Caleb Hodson,
Josh McWhirter,
and Ness Smith-Savadoff. Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz.
article and transcript support by Taylor Robinson,
and Delaney Aguilar.
Social media and PR by Ann Dang.
Intro and extra music is Ripperoo by Skeptic Moon. Find us on Spotify or at local live music venues in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.